I was hoping we could chat through this passage with an old friend of ours. Some of you might remember Clyde. Also, some of you might not remember Clyde at all. Anyway, we're about to see if you do. And so just to see if he's home, I thought we could call out Clyde in big loud voice after 3. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Clyde! No? Okay. Let me knock, but this time say it louder after 1, 2, 3. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Clyde, hello.
Hello, Amy.
It's great to see you.
Hello, everybody.
It's been such a long time. Clyde.
Amy,
yes.
there are people in church.
There are, isn't it great?
It's been a while.
It has. I don't think we've seen you in the flesh since our online times.
Yes.
It's really great to have you here today, Clyde. I'm really glad that you're here. And I'm also really hoping that you just heard our Bible reading because I would love to chat with you about it, if that's all right.
Of course. Very well read.
You're very old and wise.
Wise.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. You know,
Old.
yes. Well, you're older than me, Clyde.
Just.
Indeed.
2 years.
Yes. All right. Can we? I've got some questions from the first verse. So everyone, if you have the Bible passage there, have a look at it. There's a few really big words there that I'd love your help to answer. So in the first verse it says, "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities." What does it mean to be subject?
Subject. I think what Paul is saying is that there is an order of things, and it is recognizing that we are part of that order and respecting our leaders.
Like yourself, Clyde. Yes.
Like me.
Yes, indeed. So
Your elders.
the elders, yes. Who else are the governing authorities? Is it just our elders, or are there other people who make them up?
The vicar's very important.
The vicar. Yes.
Also, our politicians.
Politicians, great.
The police, our teachers, the government and our schools and hospitals, all things that have structures for our good.
Yeah, okay. So the governing authorities mean lots of different people and groups.
That's right.
And things that make up the order of our society. All right, so there's the last word in that verse. So it says, "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established." What does established mean?
Established. I think Paul is saying here that it has been set up by God. That's what established means. Put there by God.
Put there. So these governing authorities, so our government, our police force, our teachers, all the governing authorities, they are put there by God. That's what they're saying.
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's great. Thank you so much. So if we keep on chatting through this passage, there's some consequences to obeying or disobeying our authorities, it seems. So okay, wait, let me summarise. We've got, first of all, that we should willingly submit to our governing authorities, like our teachers, like our bosses, our politicians, our vicar, with respect, because God has put them there, right? I think a good example of that is the Queen. As we remember her this week, she ruled in service of God, right? And I think it was really easy to submit to her rule because of how she cared for her people.
Yes. Amy, she was a very good example.
Yeah.
But what about bad rulers like Darth Vader? Aren't the rebels the good guys in the movies?
Yes. Well, we do love the rebellion in Star Wars. They are the good guys there. But I think what Paul is saying in this passage is that rebelling against authorities is bad, because it would be rebelling against what God has set up. So imagine reading Star Wars, watching Star Wars and thinking, oh, the rebellions are bad. That's a big That's a big change in our thinking, because it says that those who rebel, they're going to get punished. Like if you do something wrong at school and you might get a detention or a timeout or something like that, right? But if you don't, and you're going to be totally fine. So if the rebellions didn't rebel, maybe they'd be okay.
Amy,
Yes.
don't you want to be free from the fear of authorities, though?
Yes, Paul says that as well. Don't you want to be free of that fear? I've got a story about this actually. So I work here at Carlton during the week. And there's not much parking that's available for the full day. You can see where this is going already. My first week here, week 1, I got a parking ticket. It was devastating. I've had many since then. But you can only park for 2 hours out here and around the place. I have a healthy sense of fear of the parking inspectors. Though sometimes I tempt fate a little bit, Clyde. I sometimes might just wait a few minutes past my car alarm bell, or sometimes I just forget entirely, and then the great race begins as I try and find my keys and then grab my keys and then go to the car and remember where I parked my car and
Amy,
then move it before I'm booked.
It sounds like your fear isn't quite enough if you keep getting tickets. And fear leads to the dark side. Or maybe your conscience isn't strong enough.
Maybe, goodness. For those who don't know what conscience is, it's sort of like working out what is right and wrong by what God says is right and wrong, because it's the right thing to do. So the right thing to do, right, would be for me to go and move my car as soon as the car alarm goes off on my phone. But I
But
sometimes
it
don't.
sounds like Natalie's conscience is better than yours. No parking tickets for her.
I don't think she's got one yet. That's right, it's right. So I think what Paul is saying here, if we go back to the passage now, Clyde.
Okay. Why not?
There's 2 more reasons why we want to submit to our authorities. One is out of fear of punishment, the parking inspector fear. And 2 is because it's the right thing to do. God wants us to do that, in verse 5. And I was thinking as well about this matter of conscience thing. It goes back to what Paul was saying right back at the start in chapter 12, where he says, in what we do, can be a living sacrifice for Jesus. So how we choose to live is like worshipping him, but it's also not conforming to the pattern of this world. So the pattern of this world might be to say, oh, I don't care what the parking inspectors think, I'm just going to leave my car there. Or it might be that I have a bad attitude to the authorities, and Jesus would say, no, don't do that. Have a better attitude to those things. All right. Clyde, I think there was one more big thing in this passage for why we should submit to authority.
What's that, Amy?
Well, it says that they're God's servants, which means that God is their big boss.
Their big boss.
Yeah.
Did I hear that twice in the reading?
You did. In verse 4, it says that they're God's servants, and in verse 6. So the first one is that they're God's servants for good, for good of
Just
us.
like Queen Elizabeth II. She was a great leader, a servant leader.
Yes, she was. And they give all their time to it in verse 6. She gave a lot of time. A lot of time to that. And, there was another good example I thought of, Clyde, with our government, so here in Australia. So one of the things that they're working for the good of our people for is actually their new child safe standards. There's new ones, if you didn't know, but these are there to make sure that institutions like ours and like others in our community are being really safe for young people and safe for all people. And we haven't really done a good job of that in the past as a church. So the government is doing a good thing to help correct that, right, and give us and hold us accountable to doing it better in the future. So it might mean, heads up, there might be some more work for us in the future, but we do it because it's good for us, because we love kids because we have a God who loves people and wants his church to be safe, and also because he's set up these authorities, like we were saying. And the tricky thing, I think, is having a good attitude as we implement things and as we listen to them. That can be a bit trickier. Well, it's even trickier, I think, if some of those servants who are our leaders don't follow God.
That's true. But didn't we know from the Bible that when this was written, the guy in charge was not very nice at all, a guy called Nero?
Yeah, do you know?
He was worse than Darth Vader.
Worse than Darth Vader, can you imagine? And Paul is saying to even submit to him.
It's amazing, yes.
Oh.
And there are other parts of the Bible as well that encourage us that as followers of Jesus, we keep serving and living for the good of our city and our country, even if it's hard at times.
Yeah, they do. Daniel is one of those stories, and that's a good story to go home and read with your kids later, but Daniel is a great example of living in their homeland as someone who follows God. And they have a little Christian community there. He's got a bunch of friends. They end up going in a furnace because they choose to live with God as king instead of the other king as king. So they do draw a line somewhere in the sand, but they're still working for the good of their community as they live for Jesus. Go home and have a read of those stories later on. What I want to say to that, Clyde, is that living as a Christian community is a really powerful witness to people around us, right? So in Australia, we really like the underdog. We don't like people in authority positions. That's something that's really cultural about Australians. And so if we, as a church, if we live in a countercultural way and actually speak really respectfully of those in authority, if we pray for them, it's actually a really good and easy way to show others that we live for Jesus, who is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, I reckon. And you know, Clyde, we can also still disagree with and respect people in authority, can't we? There's many constructive ways to do that. We're going to chat with some people in a moment to think about this some more. But we can pray for our government and our leaders. We can vote really responsibly. We can engage in public debate with respect. We can send letters to our MPs. We can, if you're in school, we can talk to our teachers about things that might need changing, or our school captains. Those people are there to help us have a voice in the structures that we're in. All right, we're going to keep on thinking about this a bit more, Clyde.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for coming and helping us have a think about this passage.
My pleasure.
It's been great having you. Give him a round of applause, everyone.